Welcome to the stream. My name is Martin. I am one half of the pen name Bradley Lejeune. In the last days of 2020, my friend Malcolm asked me if I'd be interested in writing a novel series together. I, of course, told him no. But obviously, I quickly changed my mind on that and spent the last year drafting the first 3 novels in the series. After Malcolm's pass, we are nearly ready to publish book 1, The McMurdo Rift. More on that later. But first, we have a short story that sets up the worlds our series takes place on, called Withdrawal. Here's the blurb. When the enigmatic but powerful Koru unexpectedly abandoned their embassy on Proxima Centauri, Vic, a one-time activist and war hero, and his shadowy friend Copeland attempt to find out if this is a prelude to a war that would prove disastrous for humanity. Their search for answers leads to dangerous discoveries. Will Vic now risk his marriage and comfortable life if it means a chance to finally find out the truth? We are releasing this exclusively to our newsletter readers. If you'd like to sign up at bradleylejeune.com, you can have a read of it. So, who have we got in the chat? Come say hello. We have Ben Pick. Hello, Ben. We have Adam Stevenson. And of course, we have Richard Holiday. And I have to say thank you to Books by Adrian for that lovely post-countdown sequence. That is very much appreciated. Question from Richard. What is my secret to drafting a trilogy in a year? Spreadsheets, obviously, and sprints. Having a sprint every day or twice a day just keeps those words flowing, and doing a lot of sums to know how many words you have to do in any day to get a book done in a month or 2 months. It makes all the difference. You would have believed it. I think you would have believed it. Don't talk to him. Talk to me. That's what this is all about. Yes, spreadsheets. That is the opposition message. We are pro spreadsheets on this channel. So, actually got the proof copy here of the McMurdo Rift, which kind of looks fantastic. But I haven't done the cover reveal yet, so we won't be seeing that. However, next Saturday, we might just have a bit more. However, Withdrawal, I spent the afternoon making sure that that was in perfect working order. And if you're already on the list, you will get it soon. If you sign up, you'll get it in your welcome email. But yeah, that is how it looks on a tablet, which, yeah, pretty happy with that. This is a very daft notion. But yeah, if you're not subscribed to the newsletter, you're not allowed to pause the playback and read those words. That is against the rules. Or the author police will come round and arrest you. That is exactly what happens. Reader magnets are one of those things that every author tells you you need, and it has also proved one of the most difficult to actually outline. The reason being, you want to have it at the end of your book to say, hey, did you like this? Then, here's more. But you also want to be able to use it to say, hey, I've done this stuff. Check it out. So it needs to make sense to someone who's read the book and someone who's not read the book. It's kind of like the movie Serenity that followed up from Firefly. It has to work both ways, which was a unique and interesting challenge. When I got near the end, there was a podcast that was talking about having 2 reader magnets, which, whilst twice the word count, would maybe have been an easier way to go. Question from Richard here. The series' main character is a guy called Mark Franklin. He runs a bar on a Starliner which has seen better days. He's actually the fighter pilot that saves Earth from the Koru at the end of the war, mentioned in the blurb. But he was never the guy that took any pleasure in pulling the trigger. So he's now keeping his head low, living a quiet life. His ex-wife, Sarah, lived on Mars. She didn't agree with him getting involved when Franklin chose to defend Earth, as Mars was one of the breakaway colonies. But she now runs a small cargo freighter moving goods from one end of the colonies to the other. She's since remarried to Vic, who is the protagonist of Withdrawal, the short story that we're here to talk about today. Vic was also on the other side of the war, fighting for the colonies against Earth. But since everything's ended, he has become suspicious of the Koru. And at the start of the first book, The McMurdo Rift, he has gone missing. Adam asks, why did you decide to write a short story set in the same world as your trilogy? This was to do with find a way to we could advertise the series, give people a free sample of the series. What tends to work well with these are if you have something that covers one of the side characters and it's around 10,000 words, so you've got enough of a story. People don't really like it if you just give out a first chapter. They like to have a complete story. So it seemed like a good way to handle that. It was interesting because my initial ideas, actually, when we sat down to write a series, it seemed like a good idea to write the short story first. And I wrote a first draft of a completely different story about a completely different character. And it was a really good exercise in fleshing out the world of the series and a really bad exercise in writing a short story. Almost nothing is left from any of that in the books or the short. But it let me find my way around the world and which bits were working, which bits weren't. And it made me realize that the short story needed to be exactly the same in tone as the first book. The books tend to take slightly different approaches to the genre. One is more military sci-fi, one is more sort of like Firefly in its approach. And in keeping with that, the short story was going to be more of a political intrigue, sort of like an episode of The West Wing, before it slowly dawned on me that a group of scenes of people talking in offices wasn't going to be the best way to introduce people to the series. So then I reworked it to be about how Vic went missing before realizing that when you meet Vic in the first book, you can't know all the stuff that you'd know reading the short story, because that would completely change that experience. So I've gone back and made it something that sets up how he gets started down that path, but not actually the moment he gets captured. Victoria Wren is here. Hello, Victoria. And Books by Adrian is here. We can calm down. Thank you for the animation. Very much appreciated. Did you plan the reader magnet before or after drafting the main trilogy, or did you have to retrofit it to your plans? Both. We did one version before and another one after. Would you ever write more books in this world? Yes. So we have 3 books which have been, well, one book that has been all but completed. It is currently being proofread and will be going to print very soon. Books 2 and 3 are in the first draft stage and will be released before or at least one of them before the year is out, hopefully. There are plans for more down the line, and potentially, if people like it, it could run and run. Tell us more about your the Koru and your influences for them. What are they like? They're actually really nice once you get to know them. They come from a planet named Home Nest. They're sort of reptilian. They've got skin that change color depending on their mood. And whilst they don't have a full-on collective consciousness, they do have a form of groupthink, which some of the younger Koru are not entirely in favor of. Why are the Malcolm newsletters more sought after than the Martin ones? So the newsletters come out twice a month. I will write one and then Malcolm will write one. Usually he doesn't give me a subject line, so I have to throw that in at the last minute. And that's usually the thing that people are attracted to, I find. Wall. Adrian, if you'd been here from the start, you would know that by now. It is the double act of Martin Lejeune and Malcolm Bradley. Coming up with an alien society is probably one of the most intimidating things about this whole project. We've all seen those, third season episodes of Star Trek where you're like, really? That's your alien idea, is it? You don't want a race of beings with a ton of apostrophes and they're allergic to milk just because. And you also don't want to figure out every tiny detail of their society and come up with one of these sort of things you get on epic fantasy novels, where they tell you more about, why the characters have the surnames they do than actually telling you a story. But you do need to keep it interesting. And obviously, the big question with the Koru is, what are their real motivations? Where we start the series, humanity is fighting amongst itself. Humans have spread out to the stars. They have settled many different worlds, and initially it was all centralized from Earth, and they it's not June. They rebel and want control of their own destinies, much like many countries we could mention in the last couple of hundred years. And Earth, as the biggest military power, is more or less able to put this down pretty quickly, except the Koru intercede, and the next thing you know, you've got energy bolts raining down on the streets of Earth, and it's all looking very end of days. They've gone from keeping to themselves to actually intervening, and then one day they just decide to leave. So the former rebel colonies are now worried that you've got these unpredictable aliens. Are they just going to turn against us like they turned against Earth? What are their real reasons? I could just tell you the real reasons, but I've sort of written a book, so I'm not going to. I'll put it in that, okay? I know Adrian's joking about this, but he would look badass in a cowboy hat. The only person who would look cooler would be Richard when he has his bowler hat on. What are your thoughts on creating diverse alien societies and avoiding the planet of the hat trope? It's a tricky one because you kind of need to give them hats to stand out. With this series, the crew aren't the only aliens, but they are the only adversarial alien with like a military presence. So it gives us a chance to actually go into more detail without you sort of sitting there going, wait, which ones were those guys again? Because they are, the main aliens. On a scale of June, brackets bad, to Nightmare Tenant, brackets amazing, how great is this book? That is not for me to say. That is for other people to say. Why is Dune the best sci-fi book of all time? I would counter the best sci-fi book of all time might well be Robert Heinlein's The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, which does a really fascinating job of painting a former lunar penal colony society. And there are definitely inspirations with what happens with the United Terran colonies and their efforts to break away. It was also a massive influence on the Expanse series. Stop getting Ben Pick wrong! Hashtag accidental partridge. The problem with Dune is it's 600 pages. like we talked about how you develop an alien race. One way not to develop an alien race is to just take a actual religion and pretend it's an alien race, because that's weird, guys. He doesn't even make up new words. He just keeps the same ones and figures no one will notice because, the Middle East isn't going to be as talked about in the 60s as it will be in a few years' time. Crude oil. It's called spice now. That's fine. But the film works a lot better than the book. And it works a lot better than the audiobook, which is narrated by Scott Brick, who is the voice of boredom. Tell us about your inspirations and who are your favorite sci-fi authors. So my inspirations, a lot of it comes from 90s sci-fi TV. Various Star Treks, Farscape, Firefly, Babylon 5 was something they've just last year remastered it in HD, which seemed like something that was never going to happen. And The Expanse, those novels, which you can see over my shoulder here, were a massive influence. One of those series that I now have difficulty finding new sci-fi series that live up to, because it was just that good. Also, the comic Saga, which is a brilliant sort of space fantasy. And, of course, Casablanca. When I needed a story point, I just went back to The Best. It is an utterly fantastic movie. I took, the idea of a jaded, world-weary barman and his ex-lover walking in to his bar one day and just put it on a spaceship, because why wouldn't you? And it's always interesting when you do things like that as a writer, how far you end up from that starting point by the time you're finished. Bevo is here. Hi, Bethany. Thank you for stopping by. I really appreciate it. Again, that's not how names work. Did you just watch Farscape for the first time? It was 1999 it started, and at the time you had like Deep Space Nine on Thursday nights and Voyager on Sunday nights, and Farscape started on Mondays, and it was really great. But by the time they got to series 3 and 4, I'd started getting jobs that meant I wasn't home in time, and it just wasn't able to catch it. But it is one of those shows that has a lot going on in rewatches, and is very divisive because of the use of the Muppets. But when it fires on all cylinders, it's great. And it got cancelled, and they had a mini-series to wrap it up, and it's one of the best endings to any sci-fi show. Every now and again, someone will say, do more Farscape, and it's like, no, it ended well. That's enough. Hooray! Other people have heard of Saga. I love this. So the McMurdo Rift is primarily set on the SS Olympic. When we broke the series, we tried to come up with settings we hadn't seen before. I initially was resistant to just have it be like Alien, where you've got a crew on a freighter going from job to job, and I didn't want it to just be the Enterprise in all but name. And one idea we played about with was it would be on a mining colony, and that would sort of be their base of operations, and they'd have a ship to go to adventures. But as we started writing, it took us away from that. And I came up with this idea of having Franklin run a bar on a luxury liner. And it was very much influenced by, the old, like the QE2 and the White Star Line and all these early 20th centuries ships that, were just so luxurious. Richard actually recommended Deep Wake, which was also narrated by Scott Brick, which talks about the sinking of the Lusitania and goes into great detail about early 20th century life. Next week is actually Straw Hat Day, the day that it is socially acceptable to stop wearing a fabric hat and put your straw hat on without schoolboys knocking it off and mocking you for wearing your straw hat too early, and other adults telling you that they are quite right to do so, as happened just before the Lusitania sailed. And that was a big influence with where we went with book 2. But we'll have another stream for that when it comes out later in the year. Yes, I designed the covers, and I can chat about that. Hang about. Right. Talk amongst yourselves. So this is the cover for Withdrawal. One of the things I realized early on is both that I wanted a series aesthetic. So you look at all the books together, they look like they are in the same series, but also if, we based it Not sure if you're hearing me, just having an issue with the camera. Hopefully can sort that momentarily. And we're back. So yeah, the idea with the cover was to do something that would both have a finally things are improving. Yeah, the idea was with the cover we would have something that was both identifiable as a series and yet also quite easy to have a base template that I can not have to reinvent the wheel every time out. So I went on the top 100 for the genre, looked at what the high selling books were doing. There was usually a ship and a planet. Looked up who the successful cover designers were, what their portfolios looked like, and tried to get somewhere in that ballpark without being too close. The big thing was finding spaceship elements. For the longest time, I just didn't think that was going to be financially viable because if you actually buy a 3D model, it can be hundreds. And if you need to commission someone to do that for you, then that's not much cheaper. But then I was able to find stock images that I could use and work with the planets and backgrounds that I was able to generate on my own. I have a background in VFX for film and TV, so I was able to use that to come up with the general style. And people seem to like it. So that's dead air. People don't generally go for that. It's really not. The Expanse tend to have these beautiful paintings which aren't necessarily literal representations of the ships or the settings, but just look damn beautiful and is actually my desktop background. Richard is typing. Since nothing can go faster than light, how do your ships go faster than light? No one cares about those questions, dweeb. We basically do the Star Wars hyperspace hand wavy, don't question it. I'm sure the ships just slip into a pocket universe or something for a bit. The real question is, what happens if they turn their headlights on? One thing that's been really fun is there's a lot of history references in the series and coming up with ideas. I quite often look at historic settings and I'll talk to Malcolm, be like, oh yeah, it's like this time in the 1870s. Like, wait, what are you talking about? Or, what about this? Would be like the fall of the Berlin Wall. And you're just like, right, context. So it's quite interesting where we can take historic settings and put them in our universe and see how they play out. What are the main themes of the book? Why are the Koru bastards? Or are they just misunderstood? I can't really. I find themes tend to work best if it's something that someone reads in after the fact. If you try and write to a theme, it can just be too on the nose. some people, you get like writing books and they'll be like, and what's your theme? And it's like, well, I don't know, I haven't written it yet. But I think the theme is there for you to find. Or maybe the theme was in us all along. One of the ideas I really wanted to make work but just couldn't quite fit was the idea that after this war, there was a... I let my critique partners tell me what my themes are. I don't know. Oh, I guess that works if your critique partners get back to you, Adrian. The idea that it would be like post-war Berlin and there would be a UTC area and a Koru occupied area. And one of my initial ideas was looking at things like Babylon 5 and Deep Space Nine, where they would set up one corner of the universe and establish that corner and build out from there. So we're off in the titular McMurdo Rift and we don't go to Earth in the first book. So we don't really see that, and to sort of try and shoehorn that in just didn't work. But it's one of those things that would be good to fit in somewhere down the line. What is your approach to beta readers? Give them a really easy to fill in questionnaire that guides them most of the way. I try when I can to beta read for people, but I don't like to do it if I can't give it my all. And knowing that, I made a point to give twice as many people the book as I expected to get back to me. And that actually worked out quite nicely. Big shout out to people who are Bethany, who gave remarkably helpful feedback that really guided the final draft into something more workable, and to let us know things were actually working. And, what wasn't. Me and Malcolm both thought that some of the characters were quite bland and others, not working. And then the feedback was like, oh, yeah, we really like that guy. I was like, oh, I guess that worked better than we thought. Hi, Nia. I can't stand Nando's. And Richard was like, hey, let's go to Nando's. I was like, oh, God. It is a second-rate rat restaurant. Basically, they say it's chicken, but it's clearly rat. But yeah, hopefully, the others will sort of maybe drop a review or let us know how it was once they do finish. But the feedback we did get was overwhelmingly positive, but that was unusual. You're so used to sort of people going, yeah, it could be better. But when everyone's just like, oh, yeah. And it's like, when people are just being like nice for the sake of it. So it was a bit disarming to have people be like, yeah, that worked. I was like, maybe I did pay attention in all the storytelling lessons after all. Wow, so much Nando's hate. Ben, if it came to eating Nando's or running, I would probably eat the Nando's because running is terrible, but there wouldn't be that much in it. Nando's is in the USA, but it's not cheeky. I think I'm right in saying Nando's is actually a South African chain. although I don't know why I'm giving them the airtime. I usually like to charge advertisers. But if we're advertising, sign up to the bradleylejeune.com newsletter. The link is down below, and you too can read Withdrawal, the new short story set in the world of the McMurdo Rift. Cheeky. No, you do not. Anyway, short stories are great. Ebooks are great. Short stories you don't have to pay for are even better. Newsletter, please. My inspiration was seeing how successful Nightmare Tenant was. Hey, I was right. There was the best thing they've ever done, because Lord knows it wasn't their food, was an advert from about, oh God, it's probably a decade ago, no, because we've lived so long, where it was just Robert Mugabe laying the Christmas dinner table for all his dictator mates, and none of them being around. Find it on YouTube. Yes, we will soon be seeing you on Book Clubs by Adrian. This mug has various Apollo moon mission quotes on it, which is good if you like tea and visiting nearby celestial bodies. Would he have pushed so hard if he had any genuine claims to fame? It's funny, I'm currently outlining the fourth book in the series, and I made a point of writing the first three before we released anything, so there'd be opportunity to go back and change things earlier on if we needed. And there's something that's not introduced to the very end of book 3 that I'm like, yeah, that does need to be set up earlier, so I'm glad we did it. But I'm going to be very curious to see how things change once this is out in the world and we start getting more reader feedback and finding out which characters people like and which ones they're drawn to. The books tend to have 3 or 4 POV characters, and I'm like, do I need to use the same ones every time? Could I not have that one be featured in this book? Or will it be like that Game of Thrones book that doesn't have Tyrion in, or Jon Snow, or Daenerys, and everyone hates, apart from Adrian, because he loves all of it. Yours, baby! It's interesting coming up with character names. I find it is often easier to just give people a temporary character name, even if you have no intention of using it, just to keep things moving. Franklin for the first draft was called Henry, before I had a very firm realization that you don't call space heroes Henry. No offense to any of the Henrys out there. Sarah was initially called Nell, which was one of Malcolm's, which just sounds like a Victorian scullery maid. And I just started calling her Sarah anyway, and it stuck. The only character we didn't give a temporary name for was the captain of the Olympic, is Arnold Philby. And the original concept was that Philby would be kind of like Captain Black to Captain Scarlet, and he'd be the traitor who would be spying for the Koru. And so I gave him a temporary name based on like some famous traitors, Benedict Arnold and Kim Philby, which would be like far too on the nose, and we'd change it later. But just as the outline went on, he went in a completely different direction. And actually, we have a character in book 2, which we were like, oh yeah, maybe they can be the Koru spy. And again, the book didn't really go in that direction. It's crazy, even with outlining. You can sort of have places you want to go and just find that the story veers away from it. Actually, when I was coming up with a name, I realized that you look at like Star Wars, Trek, Babylon 5, any of the big space opera, and the heroes tend to have names of disciples. So we ended up going with Mark. Bloody Joan! I'm not a massive fan of naming characters. I am a massive fan of character name generating websites. I think it's name-generator.org.uk, which cross-references with various databases of baby names. So if you say you want them to be from America or Britain and they were born in 1996, it will look over the most popular baby names of 1996 and suggest those with common surnames. And it used to be if I was writing a scene and I need someone who just has one line, and I'm like, right, what's this guy called? And I'd just be stopped in my tracks for hours until I could think of something to call him so I could finish the scene. And now there's so much that I do, I'll just be writing, I'll just put brackets, planet name, and move on. I'm not really a fan of, names being like meanings. It's like, they were really, the character's really brave, so I called him Steve Brave. Because it's like, wait, so you're saying that 30 years ago someone had a baby and they called them something that just happened to be a character attribute, down the line? That's fortuitous. That's not how that works at all. Put on character sheets. Do you mean like the sort of tabletop RPG characters sheets, or something different? Thanks for stopping by, Adrian. I hope you enjoy Dinners Out by Adrian. Always great to hang, dude. But yeah, in terms of anything like that, there's a real fine line between, does it help you write the story, or does it just distract you whilst you play and world build? Like, I love world building, but not quite as much as I love actually finishing a book. Placeholders are brilliant. They keep you moving. It's like, that was one of the big game changers, is going, oh, you can just call that character Stan and move on. Like, I think the most difficult character to name was probably one of the main characters is a Koru, who's helping the main characters, who is called Engie. And it was like, you don't want to just have a character with 5 apostrophes in their name, and you don't want to have an alien called Steve. So I was like, oh, maybe the Koru just get assigned letters and that'll work. And it did. But now we're 3 books in, and we're like, maybe we need rules on how Koru names work. So, do certain, is there a hierarchy to it or what? If only we'd used character sheets at the beginning. Congratulations, Kyle. We are all very happy for you. Yeah, but that's fantasy. That's not actually based in science, like science fiction, which is always based in science. If it's a design trait, that makes a bit more sense, rather than just by sure coincidence, they just happen to be named exactly what the theme of the story is. Ben, are you sure you're not thinking of the Smurfs? Well, there we have it. Never thought I'd have Richard cop to that. Yeah, Snow Crash is a great read if you want some cyberpunk, where the main character is literally called Hero Protagonist, which is one better than the guy in Heroes. The books Richard likes is so short he could fit it all on a single TikTok. I haven't actually read Neuromancer. I read Snow Crash in about 2014, and I was like, oh, yeah, this guy's quite good. I should read more of him. And that was 8 years ago. Oops. Yeah, it worked in context. One of the characters, Vic, who is the main character in Withdrawal, the short story you can read if you sign up for the Bradley Lejeune newsletter. My mental image is actually based on Senthil Ramamurthy from Heroes. I assume you were referring to Jeff the cat, the feline protagonist of the McMurdo Rift. I decided early on that Franklin would keep a cat in his bar, and it ends up going on the adventure with them. And when I got Malcolm's draft back, there were actually scenes from the cat's point of view, and I was like, this is brilliant, but it's not going in the bloody book. It just doesn't fit with the genre at all. Maybe if it was a cozy mystery and the cat had to solve a crime, but it didn't. I think they're still technically French for 3 generations, so yes. There is a suggestion that authors should have an outtake section at the back of the book with all the changes the editor insisted on making. I don't know, it'll catch on. But who would I cast in the movie version? I've just said who would play Vic. Sarah is very much Jessica Chastain, and I see, we could deep fake Franklin with a young Humphrey Bogart. That'd be wonderful. We did sit down at the start of the project and actually put actors to the characters, like just as a sort of general starting point and, something to write the description on. And some of them have stayed quite close, whereas others have moved quite far away. But yeah, it's definitely I'd say that more than a character sheet for me helps you find who the character is starting out. Who would direct the film? One of the other conversations we had quite early on is just how nice it would be if the books got optioned. Because people assume that if they're going to make a film of your book, what happens is Spielberg turns up with a lorry full of cash and takes it down and starts shooting it the next day. Whereas what actually happens, someone who hasn't got a film studio pays you for the rights to take it round film studios asking for money to make a film. So all that mostly ends up happening is you get a pile of cash for not having to do any work and nothing happening to your book, which I'm not against. I'm also not against someone, turning up and making a terrible version of the books if I get paid enough for it. But obviously, it would be nice if it got the Expanse treatments, where it got a multi-season TV show and I got a nice executive producer role on it and got to write for the scripts. That would be wonderful. It was interesting when the last Expanse books, Leviathan Falls, came out, because James S.A. Corey was the 2 writers were working on the TV show as a full-time job and then having to find time to write the novels around that, which is quite funny to think of someone that successful, still being in a similar situation to what we are, where we're having a day job and trying to fit in novel writing around it. These things never really change. Well, that's an hour. If there's no more questions, we will wrap it up here. Thank you, everyone who came out and checked it out. And if you haven't done so yet, if you click the link in the description to badlylejeune.com, you can sign up for our newsletter and read the new short story, Withdrawal. That was something else. If you want that back, you know what to do. I would sign up to the newsletter and look for news in the coming week is what I'd advise on that front. Cheers, Adam.